Hi everyone, so the thing a lot of us in the generative AI community have been waiting for has finally started to roll out. Adobe is launching its own generative AI tool. So all of these tools are still in the beta mode, but it is absolutely incredible to see what is already possible with it. And for a while I had access to the restricted beta, but recently Adobe made the beta available to everyone with a Creative Cloud subscription. So I thought I would create this course to share with you everything I learned on how these tools work in the past few months, so you can get a jump start. After the launch of my successful course on how to design websites using ChatGPT, I've been working on an all-encompassing course on generative AI for the past few months, where I'm looking at image, text, video and audio generation. So I'm really neck deep into all of these amazing tools like Midjourney and Stable Diffusion. But what Adobe launched here as a first version of their models really blew my mind. And since working with them for the past few months, I'm really excited to share what I learned with all of you. Quite a few AI tools have already been released and they are also already getting integrated in the Adobe program. For instance, the generative Recolor is already available in the Illustrator beta, and the incredibly powerful generative fill tool is already integrated in the Photoshop beta. So in this course I will first go over the basics of what generative AI is and how it works, what prompts are and how to become an amazing prompt engineer. And then we will immediately get into it by starting to generate some amazing creations using the tools we currently have access to. And I will close with what we can expect in the future of AI and generative AI and how we can best prepare for it. Also, of course, as of right now, only some of the announced Adobe Firefly models are released, but as you can see on the Adobe Firefly homepage, there are many more tools to come in the near future, and so I will be updating this course with new lessons on these new AI tools as they become available to give you all the cutting-edge lessons on Adobe's generative AI rollout. And so how this will work is that when a new tool does become available, I will play with it for a few days until I feel I really understand its capabilities, and then I will create a lesson on that tool and add it to this course. And I will then send everyone who already purchased this course an email to notify you that there is a new lesson added. So with all of that said, I'm really excited to get into this and I will see you in the next lesson. Hi everyone, so in this lesson I'll quickly go through how this course is structured and laid out. Of course, what most of you are most excited about is how the actual Adobe Firefly generative AI tools work and what they can do. If so, feel free to skip these videos for now and come back to them later. But I can imagine many of you are also interested in learning about generative AI tools in general, and I think you will be able to use these tools the most effectively if you also know a little bit about generative AI itself. So in this course I will start with some lessons going into what generative AI is, what impact its rapid development may have on the world, and how generative AI works. Then I will do a lesson on the basics of text-to-image generations, and in that lesson I will also point you to an incredible, completely free to use image generator, so that even if you don't have access to the Adobe Firefly beta yet, you will be able to start experimenting with image generation and the prompt engineering lessons you will learn in this course. Then once we have looked at generative AI and image generation in general, we will start diving deep into the different generative AI tools currently available in Adobe Firefly. At the end of this course, we will finish by looking at what will come to Adobe Firefly in the future, how it will be integrated with the other Adobe programs, what is already possible in the field of generative AI as a whole, and what some of the consequences will be, and how we can continue to stay ahead with all of this rapid development going on. So that is it for this quick note on the course structure. Please do remember I will update this course with new lessons as soon as possible after new tools are released, and you will receive an email notifying you of these updates right as they are available. So that is it for this lesson. See you in the next one. Alright guys, welcome to the next lesson. So in this one we are going to talk about what is generative AI. So as we saw in the intro, generative AI is this awesome technology that allows us to create new content, whether it is text, images, music or any other content type you can think of. But to understand a bit more how this works, let me first give you a quick overview of what artificial intelligence even is. So this is what a lot of people think of when they hear artificial intelligence, the terrible Terminator robot or the cute WALL-E garbage collector. But that is, at least as of right now, not where we are yet. You can basically think of artificial intelligence as something created by humans that executes a task that is commonly associated with human intelligence. But that is still quite a broad term that, for instance, also includes a simple calculator, because it is something created by humans that does something typically associated with human intelligence, namely doing arithmetics. But when you hear people talking about AI on the news or on the internet, that is typically not what they are talking about. Instead, they are typically referring to a specific type of artificial intelligence, namely machine learning. Machine learning is artificial intelligence because it is a computer program or algorithm that is made by humans, so it is is artificial, and the aspect of intelligence it mimics is our ability to learn. Humans can take in new information through our senses and learn new things from that information. Similarly, a machine learning model can learn new things from data. Typically, this involves large amounts of data that is often referred to as big data. By training a machine learning model on data, the model is then able to find patterns in or make predictions about that data, and even about new similar data. You could say that machine learning is nothing more than a very advanced form of statistics. A not 100% true but useful way of thinking about it is where in statistics we use existing algorithms. In machine learning, the machine learning algorithm creates a new algorithm that is the trained model. And that trained model has then learned the patterns or is able to make predictions about the data. So if all the hype about artificial intelligence is about machine learning, why is it getting so big now? Especially considering most of the techniques used in machine learning are decades old. That has to do with two big limiting factors in machine learning, namely data and the computational power needed to process this data and actually train a machine learning model using it. With Moore's law, computational power has grown and become more and more available, and with growth of the internet and data collecting sensors in pretty much any device we own, data and computation continue to grow, which continuously leads to more and more powerful machine learning models. And one form of machine learning that has started to pop up and become more and more viable in this past year, and as we speak, is generative AI. Generative AI is a subfield in machine learning where the model learns the underlying patterns in a certain type of content, for instance in text or in images, and it can then create new data of that content type based on a prompt. And a prompt is a description of the desired outcome. So whatever you type into ChatGPT or DALL-E is the prompt, and the output of the program that it gives is the new data it created. So when you get an image from DALL-E or Midjourney, this truly is a new image that has never existed before, and it is able to generate this based on many millions of images that the model was trained on. So we've seen really good examples of generative AI in text and images already, but we haven't really seen the same quality of generations on, for instance, 3D models or videos. And that has to do with the same reason why generative AI as a whole is still quite new: data and computational power. You need an incredibly large amount of data to train a good generative AI model, and text and image data is quite small relative to, for instance, 3D models or videos. One sentence is way less data than one image, and one image is way less data than one video. Still, there are a lot more types of generative AI we will look at in this course that are already quite powerful. And with Moore's law continuing as it is, we can expect many more powerful tools to emerge. Eventually, it might even be possible to generate a whole blockbuster movie using generative AI. So that is just a quick introduction on what generative AI is. In the next video, we are going to look at the impact generative AI may have on our society as a whole and why it is important to get on board with this right now. See you in that lesson. Hi everyone, welcome to the next lesson. So in this one, we're going to talk about the impact generative AI may have on society and why it is important for everyone to get on board with this right now and learn to use it. So ChatGPT was the first AI that gave many people their first aha moment, where they for the first time realized the power and potential of artificial intelligence. Before that, most people, even people who were very familiar with AI, thought of artificial intelligence as prediction machines, computer programs that were able to analyze data too big for humans to make sense of and gain knowledge from it. AI could be used to predict human preferences, solve complex problems like analyze the human genome, or predict the best action in a rule-based environment such as a game of chess. Though AI's superiority in games like chess made some people nervous, most people shrugged it off the same way we accept calculators to be faster at addition and subtraction than most humans. We were secure in our unique ability to be creative and smart in multiple domains. A grandmaster in chess could, for instance, also cook a meal, drive a car, and play with his kid. But with generative AI, what we thought of as something uniquely human, namely creating new ideas, new text, and new art, all of a sudden was not so unique anymore. ChatGPT could write musical lyrics, produce a script of a YouTube video, come up with a strategy and write a text for an online marketing campaign, write whole fiction stories, and much more. ChatGPT was even trained on a large database of code, allowing it to write and check computer code. So not only did ChatGPT show big signs of creativity, it showed competence in a wide range of tasks, making some people very nervous. At roughly the same time, text-to-image generators such as DALL-E and Midjourney started to come on people's radar. These showed an incredible ability to create completely new and beautiful images based on text prompt. Now, not only Copywriters and programmers were scared to lose their jobs, but so were illustrators, photographers, photo editors, and Photoshop experts. So where are we now, and what does this all mean for the job market and society as a whole? Many people have been shocked to see a new and much improved version of ChatGPT, namely GPT-4, launch on March 14th, when people had not even emotionally processed what GPT 3.5 would mean for their lives. And similarly, the advancement of Midjourney 5, which came out in alpha only a day later on March 15th, blew a lot of people's minds. Not only are these AIs extremely powerful, they advance at a rate that is difficult to keep up with, even for someone like me who actively tries to follow all of this. And right now, a lot of these generative AI tools are standalone products, but with companies like Microsoft aiming to integrate ChatGPT in all their Office softwares, and Adobe looking to integrate the generative AI tools in their already super powerful software, that is when the true power of these tools will be unleashed, which will really shake some industries. Many things are already possible now that are still waiting to have their impact on a societal level. You could think of it as a ball that has already dropped and is still in midair, waiting to hit the ground and have its impact on the world. Right now, we are in what economists Goldfarb, Agrawal, and Gans called the in-between time, where the technology to change the world is here, but the systems we live and work in have not adjusted yet to fully accommodate the new technology and do our benefit with it. Large organizations like companies and especially governments are slow to adopt these new technologies, and it may take a decade for wide adoption to occur. A decade in which, as we've seen, progress will only continue. But for individuals like you and me, it's much easier to adapt. We can learn to include these incredible tools in our daily working and private lives and make ourselves more powerful doing so. We can stay ahead of the curve and ride this wave instead of being drowned by it. Especially at first, these tools are not going to replace anyone, but people who learn how to use them and implement them in their workflow will beat their less flexible competitors. Eventually, as the offer of different types of media, whether it be images, tech, 3D models, etc., goes up due to generative AI, with an equal demand, the price will drop and traditional creatives drawing by hand, for example, will not be able to sustain themselves. But an opposite force may arise where people really start to appreciate human creation, and since less people will invest the time to become an expert painter, for instance, since they feel they will have to compete with AI, the expert painters that are still there will be able to charge good prices again. Disruptive technology often helps early adopters to do very well economically, while also causing established firms to be displaced or to lose market share in a process that famous economist Joseph Schumpeter called creative destruction, which he saw as the driver of economic growth, innovation, and progress. So the advances in generative AI will create new opportunities for many individuals and firms, but it will also be the demise of some others. Taking this course will be the first step in making sure you are part of the former group and not the latter. So in the next lesson, we are going to look a little bit into how generative AI works, especially on the practical side on how to use it, and I will see you in the next lesson. Hi everyone, welcome to the next lesson. So in this one, we are going to talk about how generative AI works. So let's first take a look at how the actual model works. So generative AI is first trained on an enormous dataset. From this dataset, the AI model learns the underlying patterns of the data, which it then uses to create new instantiations of that data. For instance, when a traditional machine learning model is trained on many images and their descriptions, the model would be able to classify a new image. And for the aficionados, this would be a supervised machine learning model. The model would basically process the image and compare it to its own representations of different concepts or labels and find the one the new image most closely resembles. This way, it could, for instance, recognize a cat. But with generative AI, it works the other way around. You give the model a prompt that you want a cat, and the model uses its representation of the probability distribution of what a cat is and generates an arrangement of pixels that complies to this representation it has of what a cat is. There are multiple techniques used in generative AI to achieve this, but we won't go into that in this course. But for now, let's look at some of the practical implications of generative AI that actually affect how we can use these models effectively. For all generative AI, you first have to provide an input. This input is prompt, that is a description of the desired output. In ChatGPT, the text you put in is the prompt. In DALL-E or Midjourney, the input or prompt is your description of the image you wanted to generate. For most of these models, the more precise you are, the better. It, for instance, always works well to ask for a certain style of text or image. You can, for instance, ask an image generator to give an image in the style of a famous painter or a certain medium or form of art. On the other hand, if you, for instance, ask ChatGPT to write you rap lyrics, you could ask it to give the lyrics in the style of your favorite rapper or songwriter. It even works well if you ask for a style of a certain artist, but in a medium that is completely completely different from that artist. You could, for instance, ask for an Eminem style Disney song, or you could ask an image generator for a hunter-gatherer cave painting of a spaceship. Even when you write a very precise, highly detailed prompt, the output of image generators is always going to be random, and no matter how often you give the same highly detailed input, you will never get the same output twice. That is because a degree of randomness is built into these models. The randomness sometimes will produce astonishingly beautiful results, while sometimes also failing to hit the mark and creating some pretty disturbing images. I have found that with very domain-specific questions, ChatGPT does sometimes produce the same answer twice. For instance, when asking it a very specific question about the 3 forms of machine learning. But when asking it for a song or a story or a list of ideas for something, it will always produce something new. This randomness makes it so that there still is a large degree of unpredictability with these programs. When you want to generate a certain image, you could get it the first time, but sometimes you may have to run a prompt for 10 or more times to get the result you were looking for. But as you get more experienced in using these tools, you will get better and more quickly getting the result you want. And that is of course also something we will help you with in this course. Now let's look at different types of input or prompts you can have. Most generative AI models use text prompt. You explain what you want in text, but a prompt could also be an image or a combination of different media types. It is, for instance, slowly getting possible to create 3D models based on one or more 2D images, for instance with the KDIM app, as you can see here, where a 2D drawing is transformed to a 3D model, or with 3Dify that can generate 3D models of furniture based on one or more pictures. You can also ask GPT-4 to describe the content of a picture, in which case the prompt is a combination of the image and the text asking to describe it. And with different forms of transcription AI that transcribe audio files to text, the audio file can be considered the prompt. For instance, animation generators and other generative AI, there are some more complicated prompt settings, but we will look into those as they come up. So that is it for this quick overview of how generative AI works, and I will see you in the next lesson. Hi everyone, so in this lesson I will give an introduction to text-to-image generator. So text-to-image generation is of course one of the main technologies in generative AI next to large language models like ChatGPT, and text-to-image generation is one of the main generative AI technologies that are the basis of Adobe Firefly. Vox actually made an amazing video explaining how text-to-image generators actually work in easy to understand terms, which I will link below. But for now, let's get to generating some images. So not all of you will have access to Adobe Firefly, but you may still want to play around with this amazing technology. And luckily for those people, there are actually quite a few free image generators. I've tested them all and found the Bing image creator by Microsoft by far to be the best one. Thanks to their close relationship with OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT and DALL-E, Bing has recently added their own image creator, and it is completely free and unlimited, and the quality even is comparable to that of Adobe Firefly, although the Bing one does not have any of the cool options that the Adobe generator does. So to get to the Bing image creator, simply open a new browser and type in bing.com and let's hit enter, and then on the left here you can hit images. This is in Dutch, so let me change that to English. So you can type images right there, and then on the right you can see image creator, and if you click that you're going to be brought to this page. It's going to make you accept cookies. You can also reject them of course, and if you click join and create, it's going to ask you to sign into your Microsoft account, which I'll do. And once you've logged in, you will see this amazing showcase of beautiful creations other people have made using the Bing image creator. And if you hover over any of them, you can see the prompt that was used to create the image. So I would recommend scrolling through this and going through it a bit and reading the prompts and get a sense of what is possible and how a good prompt is written. So the way that most of these image generators work right now is that you simply write the nouns and adjectives describing what you want to. In ChatGPT, for instance, you might give a full instruction like please draw me a blue sports car, and actually, though it may seem weird to say please to an AI, research actually found that saying please to ChatGPT produces a better result. But in image generators, these instructions do not work. If you want a drawing of a blue sports car, you can simply type in drawing of a blue sports car, or you could even do blue sports car, drawing. And so that's just going to be the description of what you want. So just play around with this a little bit and get a feel for it. If you can, of course, you can use Adobe Firefly to play around with this, and you don't have to worry about all the settings on the right just yet. We will look at that in much more detail in the next lesson. So now let's quickly go through a good introduction to prompt engineering for image generators. So just as a quick recap, a prompt is the text you put into a generative AI, and it is a description of the desired outcome. The generative AI produces new data based on this prompt, and in the case of text-to-image AI, that new data is going to be one or more images. types. Prompts can be highly complex with tens of elements and be a whole paragraph long. The outcomes to such highly detailed prompts will be less random, so multiple iterations of the same paragraph long prompt are likely to produce quite similar images, while they will still always differ due to the built-in randomness of the models. Prompts can, on the other hand, also be quite simple. You could just write a single letter, for instance, which often produces an image of that letter in a certain font, or for some reason they often also produce female portraits. But a bit more realistically, a prompt could just be a few words, and this will produce quite varied responses depending, of course, on how generic the words are. The 3-word prompt hyperbolic discounting visualized will produce quite similar output, while the 3-prompt dogs wearing clothes will produce quite different output. You can use this randomness of short prompts to your advantage by always starting with a simple prompt. If you do not yet know exactly what you are looking for, the AI may very well surprise you and generate a real winner on the first go with a simple prompt. Then you can keep iterating and making the prompt more and more specific to get closer to what you are looking for. Now, we already saw how adding different styles to prompts is a really good way to get better and interesting outcomes. And one thing I recently started playing with is adding multiple different styles together, which gives some incredible results. So here, for example, I generated a proud, heroic dog in the style of surrealism, expressionism, and cubism combined. And here I just added some styles together. Now, this will look very abstract if you just combine some styles, but if you add the ultra-realistic style to it, you get some amazing, incredible images, as you can see. And you can just keep adding or subtracting styles and see how they turn out. Here, for instance, I first found this very cool style combination, and then I added the content I wanted in front of it, namely a proud, heroic dog again. And the result was just amazing. But now let's look at some categories of styles or prompt modifiers we can use. And remember, you can use one or more of every one of these categories to get as precise an image as you can. So I actually went ahead and created and compiled this table, the Prompt Engineers Modifier table. And you can also find a PDF version in the lesson resource. I created 8 categories of different types of modifiers: style, medium, artist, material, mood, time, location, and framing. And for each of these categories, I added 10 examples you can try. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but I think it is a great set to start with, and mainly this will help you think of how you can specify your prompt the exact way you want. So style is basically the school of art which will determine some of the color, the types of shape, the level of detail, and the artistic currents that will influence the creation. Some examples we've already seen, like surrealism and cubism, but also pop art, for instance. Then we have the medium in which the art will be portrayed, for instance a photograph or a drawing or a 3D render. Next we have artist, which will include the style of that specific artist in your image. There is some controversy here about copyright, but so far it is totally legal to use these in your prompt. Next there is material, which you can implement in your prompt by adding comma, made out of, and then the material. You can get really creative with this, for instance by generating an object made out of flowers or stained glass. Next there is mood, which will set the tone for the generation. You could do happy or romantic, or perhaps sad or spooky. Then there is the time category. Time could be the time of day, like golden hour or at night, or the time of the year, like winter. Or you could do historic times, like the Renaissance. Location can similarly be interpreted quite broadly. It could be a type of location, like underwater or in space, or it could be a geographical location, like Africa or Times Square. Finally, the framing of the shot decides what of the content you will see and how you will see it. These are all terms from photography. So for instance, a macro shot is a very close-up, highly detailed shot. You could do fisheye, which uses a very wide-angle lens with a 100-degree field of view, or you could do a normal wide angle, which does not make the image look distorted. Alright, so reference to that table should really help you find the style or modifiers you are looking for. So I hope that helps you get started with image generation, even if you don't have access to all the Adobe Firefly features just yet. One more note on the image generation and the workflow of working with the image generators is basically what this technology does is it allows anyone to call themselves an art director. You direct what art you want to be created and the AI executes. And on the back end, you are the judge deciding what is good and not good. And you then direct which changes should be made, or if the artist should try again, etc. This is an iterative process where the quality of your judgment and your experience to see what changes need to be made will be a big factor in deciding the quality of the final product. And that is just something that will take some time and practice to perfect. And in the next lesson, we are going to do a deep dive into Adobe Firefly and everything it can do, as well as what makes it unique and and superior to the free Bing image creator. And you will also see that this idea of the iterative process functions especially well in the Adobe Firefly interface. So that is it for now, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Hi everyone, welcome to the next lesson. So in this one we are going to learn everything there is to know about Adobe's new text-to-image model. So in the background right now you can see a sped up recording of me using the Adobe Firefly's image generator to create the thumbnail of this course. And as you can see, it is a very iterative process where I keep making little tweaks. And after working with many other image generators for many hours, I think I like the workflow of Adobe Firefly the most by far. But before we look at that amazing workflow that is possible thanks to the easy to use user interface in Adobe Firefly, let's first go over all the options that we have. So right now the way to get to the text-to-image generator, if you have access, you simply go to firefly.adobe.com and click generate on the text-to-image box. That will first bring you to this gallery with many different generations that other people are making, and you can also see the prompt right there, and then you can click try prompt to of course try that prompt. But down here you also have this bar where you can immediately type in your text prompt. So for this first prompt, let's write a cowboy riding a shark underwater in a desert, and let's hit enter, and there we go. So of course those results aren't very impressive just yet, but once we type in this prompt and hit enter, we are brought to this workspace where you always get 4 image generations, and on the right here you can see all the settings that we can use. So let's go over some of these options. So first off, right here we have the aspect ratio that we can change, and so by default it's going to be square, but we can also set that to widescreen, which is 16:9, or portrait, which is 3:4, or landscape, which is going to be 4:3. And the first number here is always going to be the width, and the second number is going to be the height. So here you can see some common aspect ratios and what they are used for. 16:9 is typically going to be the best for your normal horizontal screens, and for instance if you want to create a thumbnail for a YouTube video or a welcome image on your website. Then here I went ahead and generated 4 images in different aspect ratios and looked at their resolution. So for each of them, the shortest side is 1024 pixels long, and the other side is either the same in the case of a square image 1:1, or 1408 pixels in the case of 3:4 or 4:3, or 1792 pixels for the 16:9 option. So of course the aspect ratio you're going to choose is going to depend on what you want to use the image for. But as you can see in these example images, the aspect ratio is also going to determine the composition of your image. So a vertically oriented image like the 3:4 image is going to have more vertically oriented compositions and more vertical elements, while the horizontally oriented images are also going to have more horizontally oriented elements and compositions in the image. So that is also something to keep in mind. And so right now let's select widescreen, which is 16:9, and as you can see, as soon as we select that, it's going to regenerate these images in 16:9. So as you can see, the images are different from the original ones, but they are also somewhat similar as well. You can see for instance that the shark looks similar to their respective images, and the cowboys also look somewhat similar to their previous versions. And we will look at this similarity a bit more coming up here. So that was the aspect ratio. Let's now look at the other options we have. So right here, these options we have are what in other image generators you would manually add in your prompt as style elements. So for example, in this prompt I could add ultra realistic and hit enter, and as we saw in the prompt engineering lessons, that's going to make our generations a lot more realistic. But in this Adobe Firefly system we can actually just select the styles that we want, and it's going to add them below right here. So for example, in the content type it already selected art for us by default, and you can see art right here. And so in the prompt on the back end, I think this is going to add art to our prompt. And for instance, instead of ultra realistic, we can also go right here under styles, you can go to themes and then select hyper realistic, and then if we hit generate, that is also going to add some of the style of ultra realistic to our creations. So now we could for instance remove ultra realistic from right there, and it's going to look very similar to when we just had ultra realistic right here. So in the prompt engineering lesson I showed you the prompt engineers lookup table that I created, and that table is actually made completely redundant by this great user interface that Adobe added right here. So right here you can see styles, and you can just select themes. So these would be the classes of prompt modifiers in my table, so those would be the columns, and then below that right here you have all these different options for them. And so for example in movements right here you can see there is steampunk, synthwave, vaporwave, there's minimalism, pop art, fantasy, cubism, cyberpunk, and much more. And you can just select some of these, and you can even select multiple, and as you can see they will all just pop up right here, and then we can hit generate, and it's going to add all those themes to our generation. And there's something really incredible that just happened here. here you may not even have noticed, so let's put these images and the previous side by side. The images stayed almost exactly the same in terms of composition. Only the style the image is in changes, and this is really powerful. So this was of course possible to do already in, for instance, Midjourney or Stable Diffusion, but to do this with those models you would have to use an image prompt where you weigh the original image very heavily and change only the style using a prompt, which would often take quite a bit of trial and error. But with this great user interface, Adobe Firefly takes care of all of that for you, and all you have to do is click the style button. And so since this user interface does give us the option to very quickly and easily add many styles to this prompt, let's see what the result will be if we add very many of these styles together. So for instance, let's go to themes, and right here we already have hyperrealistic selected. Let's also select digital art and graffiti, and let's scroll up and let's go to technique, and let's select acrylic painting and for instance bold lines, and then let's go to effect and let's select neon for instance, and maybe isometric, and let's also select bioluminescent. I'm not even sure what that means, but let's just select it, and then let's go to materials and let's select layered paper. I think that would look cool. And then let's also select metal, and then for concept let's select nostalgic and simple, and while we're at it let's also select divine, and then let's hit generate to see what that amalgam of all these styles is going to create for us. And as you can see, something interesting and unexpected happened right here. So if you look at these images side by side, the left one only has 5 styles, while on the right, new generations, we added 16 different styles together, but it didn't make any change at all. So there's a certain number of styles beyond which it doesn't do anything. So let's investigate that a bit further with an example where a lot less is going on, so we can see the differences between generations better. Alright guys, so let's look at this example. So the prompt I used is a green turtle holding a coffee cup on a wooden table, as you can see here. And so let's first just select a different content type. So let's go for photo for instance. As you can see, that's going to immediately regenerate our images because we cannot have multiple of these selected at the same time. So if we choose a different one, it's going to create a new generation immediately. And now let's click graphic. So you can see the basic composition of these pictures does stay the same. So if we go back to art right now, you can see it doesn't even have to load anymore because it's just going to go back to the one it generated earlier. And now we can just go to photo, graphic and art, and we can see that the difference is minimal, which is super cool. So let's keep this on art for now, and then let's look at styles. So we already saw that we can select a few styles, and that's going to change the style without changing the composition, but we can't select too many styles. So let's try to sort of see what the limits are. So let's first select 3D art right here under themes, and let's hit generate, and there we go. Everything's going to stay the same, but now with the style of 3D art. And then in the same themes category, let's also add hyper realistic, and let's hit generate, and that definitely changed something. So we are able to use multiple styles within the same style category. Now let's select pixel art and see if it can also do that. So that's a very obvious one. You can definitely see that it included pixel art in there. So now let's try to also add low poly, and let's hit generate, and that also still seems to do something. So then let's try to go to the movement category, and let's select psychedelic, and let's hit generate. Alright, so now it's even difficult for me to see if anything changed. So let's look at them side to side. So as you can see, it did change slightly. So it's not like there's no effect, but the effect is very marginal and very slight. And then let's for instance also try pop art, and let's hit generate. So those still seem to do something, but with the more styles you add, the added effect is going to be smaller and smaller. So now let's try to go to materials, and let's say we want this to be made out of clay for instance, and let's hit generate. And I don't think that's very noticeable. I guess in this one you can see it a little bit, and in this one as well. But as I said, the more of these styles you're going to add, the less effect it's going to have on the images. So let's for instance delete some of these styles right here, and let's only try to look at what the materials are going to do. So let's hit generate, and here you can very clearly see that it's going to try to add this clay texture to it. So let's go to materials, and let's maybe also try to add wood carving, and let's hit generate. And you can also see, especially on the shell of this one right here, that it added quite a bit of that wood carving element in there as well. So I think these styles right here don't work as well as adding multiple styles in the prompt in different image generators, and that's probably because the styles right here do something different than the styles in the prompt. So if you write a style in the prompt, you're also going to get the influence of very many images that are made in that style. So you're also going to get objects and forms and shapes and colors that are associated with those styles into your images, instead of just changing the composition and the elements that are already in the image into that style that you select. So then one other thing, every time you make a change in the styles, so for example, if I now also select origami for instance and hit generate, as we've seen this whole time, these images are going to maintain their composition and the basic content of the images. But if I don't make any changes in the style and I hit refresh, as you can see, it's going to create completely new images for us with these styles in there as well. So if you don't want to lose your compositions that you have already, make sure that you always make a change in the style and don't click refresh twice to try to get a different effect from the styles, because then you are going to lose your image. Alright, so besides this styles tab, you also have these three options down here, and the first is color and tone, the second is lighting, and the third is composition. And right here for color and tone, we are able to select between all these options. And so for instance, if I want this to have a little bit warmer tone, we can select that and hit generate, and that's going to give us slightly warmer colors in these images. And I think it also changed something about the images themselves actually. And then for lighting, we could for instance select dramatic lighting. So let's select that and hit generate, and it looks like that's going to give it a little bit more contrast, and it's going to make the edges a little bit darker to give it a little bit more of a cinematic, dramatic look. And then finally for composition, this is going to be the frame or the type of shot that is going to be made. So let's for instance select macro photography, which should be very close up, but I'm not sure if it's going to do that because these images are already made. So yeah, as you can see, it's not really able to zoom in to the macro level because it's not changing these images. And so that is a quick overview of all the options that we have on the screen on the right here. Alright, so this interface on the right here is really nice, especially if you just want to quickly see how different styles look on your image while keeping the essence of the composition of the image, which is super nice. And also if you are a beginner in prompt engineering, having all of these options to choose from is also going to be super helpful, since you probably won't know a lot of these styles yet. Then one thing that is also interesting about this is that since Adobe seems to be very concerned with the ethics of who owns these images, in this styles tab there is no artist category. So we are not able to quickly select an artist that we want our image to be in the style of. And of course I tested if it was possible to ask for a certain artist style in the prompt, and I was able to do this with our Dutch national pride Van Gogh, who isn't alive anymore, but I was not able to do it with Banks, and it even gave a pop-up saying that this was in violation of user guidelines. So if you've been used to using artist name in your prompt, that's going to be a lot more restricted on Adobe Firefly. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. So that is a really nice workflow to find the style you want to use for your image, and also to quite quickly be able to experiment with different styles. But once you have found the right style, there is actually another super nice workflow thanks to the user interface of Adobe Firefly that allows you to iterate in a really user-friendly way, step by step, towards an amazing image. So let's look at that now. So within these images, there are two options that we have. So first off, for these images, you're able to create variations. So this is of course something that we can also do in DALL-E and Midjourney, for instance. And so I actually really like this one. So I'm going to click show similar, and that's going to create 3 variations right here while maintaining this one image right here. And as you can see, that created 3 images, and we are able to do this indefinitely. So we can just click show similar again. And by the way, I'm going to edit out all of the wait time that I have, but really it's very fast. So for all of these generations, I'm having to wait no longer than about 15 to 20 seconds, which is about 3 to 4 times faster than other image generators that I've used. But that may just be, of course, because it still is in the beta and the servers aren't that busy as of yet. So maybe those wait times will be longer in the future when everyone will have access to it. So what's already really nice about this workflow is that once you've created these similar pictures, once you see one that is a little bit better than the one you had, for example, I think this one looks really cool, then you're able to just click show similar here, and that's going to iterate with this image now. And you can see how this iterative process can help you move closer and closer to the exact image that you want to create. So for instance, now I like this one better, so I'm going to click show similar on this one. And since as of right now this is still free to use for me, there is no credit system that costs me money every time I want to generate another image or another 3 images. I could easily just keep doing this for as many times as I want. But there's actually one more trick that makes this iterative process even better. And that is if you go to these 3 dots, and if you click that, and that's going to bring up 3 options. First, you can submit it to the Firefly gallery. Then down here, you can also copy to clipboard. And as you can see right here in this Google Doc, if you do that, copy to clipboard, it's basically like copying the image. And then if you hit Ctrl V, it's going to paste that image right there. But the third thing you can do, and this is actually the really exciting part, is use this image as a reference image. So if we click this, that image is going to pop up right here, and it's also immediately going to create 4 new images. And all 4 of these images are going to use this initial image as a ref. And as you can see, the composition of those images are pretty much exactly the same as that initial image that we used. But still, there is a lot of variation between them. And so right now, these images are created using 2 separate things. So the first is going to be that image that we used, and the second is going to be the prompt with all the styles that we've used. And right now, as you can see, it holds on pretty tightly to the original image that we set as a reference. So this composition of these 4 images are very very similar to this original image, and maybe we want to give the prompt a little bit more strength to vary a little bit more away from the original reference image. And to do that, we actually have this slider right here where we can give more weight to either the prompt or the reference image. So for instance, if I put this all the way to the left, so most of the weight is on the reference image, it's just going to regenerate the reference image 4 times. But for instance, if we give a little bit more weight to the prompt, then as you can see, it will start to generate some interesting variation. And now what you can do, of course, is select the most interesting of these and create variations of those. And creating those variations is going to remove the reference image. But if you don't like any of the variations, you can just reuse this image as the reference image so that you don't lose that initial composition that you really liked. And then you can really start iterating with this. So for instance, now I think this one looks the coolest, so I can just show similar on that one. And if I don't like any of these, I can just use this as my reference image and see what shows up. And of course, we've only been iterating with this using only our ability to create variations and set images as our reference image and change the weight of the reference image versus prompt. But of course, along this process, we are also able to change the prompt. So for instance, sometimes in this, it's going to be a female cowboy and sometimes it's going to be a male cowboy. And it even seems like it does this 50-50. So it's going to create 2 female cowboys and 2 male cowboys, which may be something in the explicit programming of this model. I'm not sure about that, but that's something I've noticed before. So maybe we do want this to be a male cowboy. So we can just change this prompt right here and add a male cowboy and then hit generate again. And as you can see, that's going to create new generations with, in this time, only male cowboys on it. And so now we have 3 options we can use to keep iterating on these images to continuously move more towards the image that we actually like. And there we go. So this is the image I landed on after a few more iterations. So I think the colors and the composition right here are amazing. I think the shark looks amazing as well. But one limitation of this model is that it's not really able to do this face and these hands of the cowboy in too much detail. And that is of course something that we saw Midjourney 5.1 and Midjourney version 5 are very good in. So that's definitely something that we'll have to improve with this model in the future. But considering this is the first version of the Adobe Firefly text-to-image generator, I think this is an amazing result. Alright guys, so that is it for the lesson on the text-to-image generator. Let's do a quick recap of everything we talked about. So we talked about 2 basic processes of how we can iterate towards an amazing image. First off, on the right here, you're able to select and change the appearance in an iterative manner without changing the composition and the content of the image. And you can start doing that by choosing the right aspect ratio that you want for whatever purpose you want to create this image for and what orientation you want it to have. Then you can choose the content type in a non-destructive way, so you can change this and play around with this, and the previous versions in the previous type will just be maintained, as you can see right here, which is super powerful and unlike other image generators that I've played around with. Then down here we have the styles, where you can also just select a style and hit generate, and it's only going to affect the appearance and not the composition. And of course, if we do want to change the composition, we can just hit refresh right here without making any changes to the style, and that's going to give us 4 completely new images. Now I actually don't want to do that because I like this one very much, so I'm also going to favorite that one. And here you can basically just have a process of changing different styles and checking them out, and you can also use multiple styles at the same time and combine them in nice interesting ways, but the returns are going to be very diminished if you go over more than 5 styles, so that's something to keep in mind. And then on this left part of the workspace, we are actually able to change the composition and the content of these images. So right here we can first create variations, and it's going to maintain this image while creating 3 new ones that are similar to this one. Then another thing we can do right here is use this image as a reference image, and that's going to create 4 new images with this image as a reference. And as you can see, that's going to maintain a lot of the composition of the image while also producing quite a bit of variation, and the amount of variation you can change by adjusting the relative weight of the reference image compared to the prompt. And then of course throughout this process we can also change the prompt itself. And during this lesson I've been looking at the appearance iterations and the composition iterations as 2 separate processes, but of course they can also be combined, and once you have a nice composition you can update the style a bit, and based on that new style you can also update the composition again, etc. So that is it for this lesson on the text-to-image generator, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Hi everyone, welcome to the next lesson. In this one we are going to look at the next one of Adobe Firefly's tools, namely the text effect tool. So let's click right here, and as you can see, what this text effect AI is going to do is it's going to create letters, and it's going to make them look like whatever you want based on a text prompt. So for instance, right here we have the P in gingerbread decoration, or right here we have a T in flower lay, or right here we have an L made out of a pizza. So the way this works is quite straightforward. You can just type something that you want the letters to be made out of. So for instance, I could type bright green snails, and let's hit enter. And then by default, the text is going to be Firefly, as you can see, and right here we have Firefly made out of bright green snails, which actually looks pretty cool. And right here on the bottom left, you're able to change the text. So we are able to add Adobe in front of it, for instance, and that's going to leave us with the same style, but it's going to add some more letters to it. And then similar to the image generator, right here on the bottom, we have 4 options that we can choose from, and it's going to take a little bit for them all to load in. There we go. And that's the third one and the fourth one, and there we go. And then on the right here, similar to the image generator, we also have some other options. So for instance, right here, we are able to change the font. So as you can see right here, it's going to fill up the text with whatever we choose in the prompt, but the shape of the letters is still going to be determined by the font right here. So I could, for instance, select Cooper, and that's going to regenerate all the letters, but now in the Cooper font. So one thing that's also nice about this text generator is similar to the image generator is if you go back to a previous style on the right panel right here, you don't lose it. So now we tried out Cooper, and maybe if we didn't like it, we can just return to this one, and even all the previous ones right here, they stay loaded in until we hit refresh right here. So let's go through all the options we have on the right here. So first off, on the top right here, there are some sample prompts, and right here, if you click view all, you're going to get a lot more options. And in my opinion, a lot of these are a little bit boring because they are only 1 or 2 words, although they do look really cool. So one thing to keep in mind is that what is generating are images. So this is not an actual font that you could type with. So if I click downloads right here, for instance, and I click continue on this content credentials pop-up, as you can see right here, it's going to give us a PNG file. So if I open this, it's just going to be an image. So the way you would use this is as a title for a poster, for instance, or maybe as the first letter of a blog post, similar, for instance, to how they had on medieval manuscripts, where the first letter would be very nice and special. And then using Adobe Firefly, you could make that first letter be related to the actual content of the blog post. Or for instance, for an invitation card to a children's birthday party, you could write something like "You're invited," and then for the prompt, you could do something like "exploding colorful piñata," and let's hit enter and see what that does. And it seems like it doesn't recognize piñata because of this little wave on the end. So let's just write piñata and let's see if it does that. And there we go. So that would be a really nice title for a birthday party invitation. All right, so right here on the right, you can also see there are some different categories of the sample prompt that they gave. So first off, we have nature, for instance, flowers. And I actually just now noticed that if you click flowers, it doesn't just say flowers. It's actually a very specific type of flower, which is pretty cool. Then right here, we have materials and textures. And so for instance, we could do broken glass. And then finally right here, we have food and drink. And we already looked at donuts. So let's look at ice cream. And there we go. So that would just be the basic use of this, is just typing in a material or a sort of object that you want these letters to be made out of. But you're actually able to do quite a bit more right here. So for instance, let's type in astronaut. And right there, you can see it's going to fill these images or these letters up with astronauts. But we can expand this quite a bit more. So we could, for instance, write astronaut in space. And then in some of these, you're going to see a little bit more of the cosmos behind it. And it's actually made the word a little bit smaller so that the letters are bigger, so we are able to see better. So let's type AI, or let's actually type space. There we go. And now we can actually expand this. So we could do in a spaceship. Now, as you can see, there are a little bit more mechanical things in the background. And now we can expand this even more. So we could say, for instance, with the moon in the background. And as you can see, especially with this P, for instance, that looks really cool. And then we can now, for instance, write monkey astronaut. And as you can see, that's starting to look really cool. And we can expand this as much as we want. So for instance, I could say monkey astronaut holding a banana in space with the moon in the background. So as you can see, you can actually make whole scenes in these letters. And doing so, you can take this way further than just selecting a material or a type of object that you want these letters to be made out of. And right now, we haven't even looked into all the options yet. So right here, there's also this text effect fit. And this is going to determine how much the images that are filled in right here are able to overlap the boundaries of the font. So right here, for instance, you can see this banana is going beyond the border of the S. And right here, this little planet is as well. And this is with the medium text effect fit selected. But if we, for instance, select type, then there's going to be a lot less overlap. And if we select loose, there's going to be a lot more overlap. And as you can see with loose, it's also going to create some of these artifacts around the letters that expand the image a little bit. And some of this is a little bit hard to see right now because we have a transparent background. But if you go to the bottom right here, you can also change the color of the background. So for instance, we can make that white, and that already looks very cool. And we can also make it gray or black. And it's really going to change the feel of the whole image to change the background color. So I think I like white pretty good for this one. And similar to how you can go back to a previous font setting without losing the initial composition, you can also go back to the previous versions of this text effect fit. And doing so, you can also see that this does change the images in the letter a little bit, but not too much. So the basic composition is is going to stay the same, but for instance right here you can't see the face, and right here you can see the face quite well, so there are some changes. And then right here, beyond changing the background color, which you can do quite easily, you can also change the text color, and that is going to regenerate these letters, but it's going to maintain your composition, but it's just going to make it a little bit more black, or it's going to give it a little bit more influence of a black font. And it's a little bit hard to tell with this example, but I think what this also does is if there is a transparent little bit in the letter, then this is going to fill it up with that color. But I'm not 100% sure about that because it's a little bit hard to see what this actually does. So as you can see down here on the Adobe Firefly page, Adobe is also working on a text to template AI. So you'll be able to create the layouts of posters and birthday cards and all that sort of stuff using a text prompt. And then of course in combination with the text effect AI, you'll be very quickly be able to create very cool designs. And this text to template AI seems to be a little bit of a competitor to Canva, which is a free service that can already be used for quick design templates. So let's quickly go to Canva. So to get there, just type in canva.com and it's going to send you to this website. And if you haven't already, you can go to the top right to create a free account, or you can just log in with your Google account. And then right here, you're just able to select one of these templates, for instance, a poster. All right, so that's going to bring you to this page. And right here, you're just going to get a blank canvas. And then on the left right here, you're going to be able to select one of these pre-made templates. And some of these templates are going to require a paid plan. So you will need to have the pro plan, as you can see on the bottom right of these templates. And on the top right here, you're also able to search. So for instance, we can type in paste, and then right here, let's for instance select this one. This one is not a pro template, so we can use it. So let's drag that on there, and there we go. Now I'm going to delete this title right here, and then I'm going to go to the left right here to upload, and here we're going to add our text that we created right here. So let's first download this, and I'm actually going to get cancel because we want to download it with a transparent background. There we go, and then let's hit download, and let's hit continue right there, and there we have it. So now I'm going to go back to Canva, and then I'm going to hit upload files, and I'm going to select that image that we just downloaded. There we go, and now I'm going to drag this in here, and there we go, as you can see. And now I'm going to hit Control, and then I'm going to scroll to get it a little bit bigger, and then I'm going to do something that might be not exactly according to the rules, but I'm going to remove this Adobe credential right there. There we go, that looks better. And then I'm going to align this to the center. There we go, and then let's increase the size of this a little bit, like so, and on the right as well. There we go. And then right here, if we hit edit photo on the top left, we're going to get a lot of these tools, and there are also a lot of AI tools right here. So we can, for instance, remove the background, we can erase pieces of the picture, and there is even some generative AI right here as well, as you can see. And then we're also able to add filters on this image. So I think this one actually looks pretty cool, and it fits better with this image. And then let's also give this a shadow. So let's hit shadow right there, and then let's give this a drop shadow. And as you can see, that's going to make the image itself a little bit smaller, and we can set the distance a little bit lower, and let's make the color of the shadow to be white. There we go. So it's going to pop out a little bit more, and the angle I'm going to put down a little bit as well, and the size, let's make that a little bit bigger. And there we go, and now it's got a little bit smaller. So let's actually increase the size of this again a little bit, so like that and like that, and there we go. So now let's control and zoom out, and let's put this a little bit lower like that, and then let's change this tag to bananas in space question mark. So as you can see, that's a really quick, easy way to work with the generations of Adobe Firefly and to create amazing posters doing that. So that is it for this lesson on text effects on Adobe Firefly. See you in the next lesson. Hi everyone, welcome to the next lesson. So in the last one, we used the text effect tool, and then we actually used it in cooperation with Canva because Adobe hadn't yet integrated those features in any of its own software. But everything's moving super fast right now, and right now Adobe actually integrated the text effects features and some other Adobe Firefly features in Adobe Express. So let's check that out right now. So let's first go to Adobe Express simply by typing in Adobe Express, and let's hit enter, and then let's click this link, and then it's going to bring you to this page. And what Adobe Express is it's basically an amalgamation of many of the Adobe tools specifically focused around quickly creating content. So quickly creating social media posts or other visuals. And they also have many different templates similar to Canva. So for this, you do need an Adobe account, and then you can join the free beta. So let's click that, and there we go. So this is going to give us a quick introduction about Adobe Express. And as you can see right here, it says generate extraordinary text effects and images instantly from just a description with generative AI powered by Adobe Firefly. So that is what we are here for. So let's hit let's go. And right here, we already have the text to image interface and the text effects interface. And it looks like there's also a remove background feature, which we will also look at in the next lesson on generative fill. So for now, let's just grab one of these templates. So let's, for instance, grab this Instagram square post, and let's click browse course template. And then on the left right here, we're going to see some of the templates. So let's select this one, for instance. And so right here, we can replace this title with a generated text. So to do that, let's go to the left right here and let's click text. And then just click one of these letters right here. And so right here, we have this text that we can edit. So let's type flow right there. And it's actually made that all capital letters. There we go. And then for the font, let's maybe select this one. And then we actually have to select everything and change the font. And let's grab that font and let's click that. There we go. And actually, I don't really like that one. So let's select this one. And right now we have these pink flowers right here. So let's change this description and let's make that light blue yoga mat. And let's hit enter. And it looks pretty interesting. So right now, let's first delete this flow part right here. So let's delete that. There we go. And then let's grab this text and let's place that in there. So let's make that a little bit smaller so that it fits. There we go. And we'll actually have to decrease size of this a little bit. So let's drag that downwards so it's the same size roughly. There we go. And then let's move this a little bit to the right like so. That looks better. And then let's actually change this to, instead of being yoga mat, let's make that yoga mat and see if that makes it look a little bit better. And I think this one is probably going to look pretty good. And actually that's not the best, so I'm going to select this one. And there we go. And now we can even change this image right here. If we go to media and we click text to image, and then let's make that a 4:3 ratio. And let's make that a little bit bigger to cover this whole place. There we go. And let's make that bigger on this side as well. There we go. And then let's type in for the text prompt, person practicing yoga in a gray room on a light blue yoga mat, 4K, photo. And then for the content type, I'm also going to set that to be photo. And then let's hit generate and see what that gives us. That's awesome. So let's take this one. That looks pretty good. Although of course, Adobe isn't that good at the head or the face and the hands just yet, but that will probably improve in the future. And then I'm going to select this image and I'm going to mirror it, go like this. And let's place it something like that. And I'm going to click on the top right here on change order. And I'm going to set that down and down again and down again. And there we go. And I'm going to move this a little bit down like so. And then I'm going to increase the size slightly. And so I think if you saw this flyer, you would be pretty inspired to, just like this fine gentleman who seems to be really enjoying himself, to also spend at least 20 minutes a day on stretching. So that is just a fun, quick example to show you that these tools are also integrated in the Adobe Express program, and you will also be able to find these there. But of course, all the functionality of the AI itself is the same as in Adobe Firefly. So that is it for this quick lesson. In the next one, we are going to look at generative fill. So I'll see you in that one. Hi everyone, welcome to the next lesson. So in this one, we are going to look at the generative Recolor tool in Adobe Firefly. So to be honest, it is one of the tools that I'm least excited about, because personally, I don't do a lot of vector work, but I can imagine if you use this a lot, that this could save you a lot of time. So let's see how it works. So let's click generate right here in Adobe Firefly. And then we have two options. So first off, we can choose one of these pre-made SVGs that we can then recolor, or we can upload our own SVG. But let's start with one of these examples that it gave us. So let's select this one, for instance. So this is just a vector image, something that you would make with Adobe Illustrator, for instance. And then right here, it's just going to color them according to a text prompt. So right here, it says soft pastels. And there are some other sample prompts that we can use right here. So for instance, this dark blue midnight. And as you can see, that allows you to really quickly create a color template with colors that work well together. So we could, for instance, also type in here golden hour and hit enter. Or we could type something like chocolate on the beach and let's hit generate. And it's going to give you these different color variations. And right here, so it's going to give you these different colors and it's going to fill them in randomly, or at least somewhat randomly. And right here, we can also shuffle the colors, and that's going to give us new variations of the color template. And that allows you to really quickly iterate between different options. So then there are a few more options on the right here. So first off, we are able to select a color that we want in there anyway. So for instance, if we want yellow, then it's going to give us something close to yellow. And then right here, we are also able to select the harmony, and that's going to be the color harmony. And this is going to be based on the color wheel. And so complementary is going to be two colors opposite to another on the color wheel. Analogous is going to be 2 to 4 colors next to each other on the color wheel. Triad is 3 colors that are evenly spaced out. And square is basically going to be a rectangle on the color wheel. And then there's also split complementary, and that's going to be 2 complementary colors, so 2 opposite colors on the color wheel. But then one of those colors is going to be split in 2 similar colors. And so if we select analogous, for instance, we are going to get colors that are very similar to another, as you can see. And if we select complementary, we are going to get a stronger contrast with, as you can see, because we selected yellow, it's going to give us more blues because that's on the opposite of the color wheel. And if we select queer, it's going to give us more variations of colors. As you can see, that's going to include more different types of colors. So then let's upload an SVG of our own. So let's insert this one, for instance. There we go. That's a low poly version of a tiger, and I didn't make this image myself, myself. I found it on the internet. And then right here, for the harmony, let's select split complementary, and let's deselect this vivid amber as a color. And for the prompt, let's type fierce red tiger, and let's hit generate. And there we go. So that's not exactly what I expected. So let's delete the split complementary, and there we go. That's a little bit more like it. So I like this one quite a bit, and this one also looks quite cool. So let's give that a refresh and see if we can get something even better. And there we go. So I think this one looks really cool, and it's even better. The colors are even better than the original image that was done by an actual artist. Alright, so one final thing I want to show you guys is that this generative Recolor is also already available in the Adobe Illustrator beta app. So for that, you do need an Adobe Creative Cloud subscription. And if you do, you can simply go to the Creative Cloud app on your desktop. And then if you navigate to apps and scroll down a little bit, right here you're going to find the beta app. And right here you're going to have the Photoshop beta, which we are also going to look at later when we are going to look at the generative fill feature. And below that right here we have the Illustrator beta. So let's install that, and there we go. So once it's installed, you can simply click open right there, and there we are. So right here you can see that the generative Recolor is included in this Illustrator beta. So let's close this right here, and then I'm going to open an SVG file, and there we are. So this is this nice nature landscape, and right now what we should be able to do is select all of this, and then on the right here it's going to say Recolor. So let's click that, and there we are. So now we get this Recolor field pop up, and Recolor was already an option in Illustrator, but now this generative Recolor is also possible. So let me type right here snowy winter landscape, and let's hit enter. And then we're going to have to agree to the user guidelines. So let's do that, and there we go. So that's going to give us 4 options, and there we go. So this is actually a very detailed and very complicated image, and normally it would have taken hours to recolor this entire image, and now you can just type in a prompt and click, and it's completely recolored. So that is it for this lesson on the generative vector Recolor, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Hi everyone, welcome to the next lesson. So in this one we are going to look at the generative fill tool in Adobe Firefly, and this tool is actually also already integrated in the Photoshop beta, and we will look at that in the next lesson. But for now we are going to stay in the Adobe Firefly beta environment. So let's click that to enter it, and right here there are 2 options. First off, you're able to upload an image of your own that you're able to play with, or there are some example images that you can choose as well. So let's start with that. So let's first try this example, and that is going to bring you to the generative fill workspace. Now there are a few options that we have right here. So first off, on the left it says insert, remove, and pan. So pan is just going to allow us to move around. So if you're zoomed in very far, we can for instance use this to move to another part of the image. And actually if you have one of these other tools selected, you can also hit the scrolling wheel to pan around as well, as you can see right here. And then on the left right here we're going to have 2 options, insert and remove. So for insert, if we click that and we make a selection like so, you can see the background is going to turn transparent, and then right here we are able to give a text prompt of what we want this to be filled in with. So we could for instance type spaceship and enter, and then it's going to load, and as you can see that's going to give us 4 different variations of spaceship in that area that we selected. And what's really cool, and especially visible on this one, is that it is going to use the context of the image, and it's going to apply the same lighting and the same colors to the object that it generated as well. So as you can see, the lighting right here is very similar to that of this tower right here. So let's look which one of these we like best, and I actually like the second one best. And if I want to keep this one, I can simply click keep right here, and if I hit cancel, it's going to remove that, but let's hit keep for now. There we go, and we are able to do way more things right here. So for instance, I could select an area right here, something like this, and let's make it a little bit bigger, maybe something like this, and then I could type in pirate ship, and let's hit enter, and there we go. So it's going to give us 4 variations again, and if we don't like any of them, we are also able to click more right here, and that's going to generate 4 more variations without losing the previous one. So once these are done, we are able to scroll back to the previous ones and see if any of them are better after all. So I actually like this one quite a bit, so I'm going to hit keep on that one. And that's the basic idea of this insert generative fill tool. So you just select an area and then you type in what you want this to be filled in with. And for instance, we would also be able to select this whole tower, and we could type in castle tower, for instance, hit enter, and it's going to give us some different types of towers. And this is actually something like a cathedral tower, which I actually like quite a bit, so I'm going to hit keep on that one. And so with this tool that we are using to make these selections right here, we are also able to change some of the options about it. So first off, we can hit clear right here to remove the selection that we made, and right here we have the settings option, and then we are able to change the brush size. So if we set that higher, this circle is going to be bigger, so we're going to make a bigger selection. And then right here we have the brush hardness, so that's going to change the hardness of the edge. So for instance, if I scroll in here, you can see that there's not a very hard edge right here, but if I set this to 100 for instance, you can see the edge is way harder than right here. here. And if I set it way lower, you can see it's a very soft edge. So let's keep that somewhere in the middle. There we go. And then right here, we are also able to change the brush opacity. And with this, you can do very interesting things. So let's hit clear, first of all, right now. So for instance, if I set the opacity, if I leave it at 100% and I want to select the whole sky right here, I could do that. It's going to be a little bit of a rough job. There we go. And if I now type in sky with lightning storm and hit enter, as you can see, that's going to change the entire image, or at least everything that was selected, and make it completely different from the starting image that we had right here. But if we go to settings and set the opacity to, for instance, 54% or something, and now we make that same selection, there we go. Now it's going to maintain part of the pixels within the selection. So if we now hit generate, it already looks a bit better. Let's look at the different generations, and there we go. So it's not perfect. They're all at least a bit better than the previous generation, and they're not perfect yet. So I think I'm gonna go for this one, and I'm going to hit keep. And as you can see, this ship, this tower, and this UFO right here, they sort of stick out of the background. And we can actually also use this generative fill tool to fix that. So let's zoom in on the ship right here first, and let's make this brush size a little bit smaller. There we go. And now we're going to select, and actually let's clear, and let's set this opacity to be 100 again. There we go. And then let's select this line that it made around it. Go. And there we go. And now we're not going to fill in any prompt, and we're just going to hit generate. And there we go. That's already a little bit better. I like this one quite a bit. And as you can see right here, there are 2 generations that it deleted because they are in violation of user guidelines. And this is actually a flaw in this beta version, where it often flags regular images for being in violation of the user guidelines. And that's probably something that will be fixed in the final release. But for now, let's just select this one and let's hit keep. And we're also able to do this again to make sure this blends in even better. So let's select around it right here and this part as well. There we go. And let's hit generate. And there, as you can see, it worked way better this time. And I think this one looks pretty cool. Let's zoom out a little bit. And there we go. So it's completely blended into the background. So let's hit keep. And then we can do the same thing for the UFO right here. So I'm going to select around it. There we go. And let's then hit generate. And as you can see, that first one doesn't look too well, but that one actually looks pretty good. And that one does as well. And that one's a little worse. So I think I'm going to go for this one. Let's zoom out a little bit, see if it looks good. And I think this one looks the best. So I'm going to hit keep on that. And as you can see, that's a really nice way to get the images to blend in together. So that's most of this insert tool. There are a few more options that we have right here. So for instance, if I am going to make a selection like this and I actually go a little bit too far. So as you can see, I overlapped a little bit of the UFO. I'm also able to use this subtract option right here. And then I'm able to remove part of the selection that I made. So that could also be pretty useful. Then let's hit clear right here. We are also able to select using AI the background of this image. So now it's only going to select the actual object in the image. And then we're also able to hit invert so that only those aspects are selected. And now that we have these selected, we can also use the remove tool. So if we click right there we go. And we still have that selection and we can click remove. So as you can see right here, we are not able to select a text prompt and it's just going to remove those objects, or at least it's going to try to, as you can see. So right here, it removed the UFO pretty well, but it didn't quite do the perfect job. So if we hit cancel, it's actually better to paint a little bit more around those objects like so, and for the ship as well. There we go. And let's now hit remove and see if it's able to do it right now. And there we go. So on the first one, it removed the UFO and the ship pretty well, but it's left the tower right here. But right here, it removed absolutely everything, and here as well. But this one looks awesome. So let's hit keep on that one. And so that's basically how this generative fill tool works. So now we use one of the stock images. Let's actually see if this also works with one of our own images. So let's go back right here and let's hit upload image. And I'm going to upload this image of myself. So let's see what we're able to do with. So first off, let's try to give myself sunglasses. So I'm going to increase the brush size a little bit. There we go. And then let's draw some sunglasses right here, or at least make the selection where they're supposed to go. And then let's type in sunglasses and let's hit enter. And there we go. So we have some sunglasses. So as you can see, what this does is over the entire selection that I made, it's going to create new pixels. So part of my facial structure and my eyebrows, for instance, are going to get lost and regenerated in a different way. And there is a way to mitigate that a little bit. So let's hit cancel on this. And similar to how we did with the sky in the previous example, we are able to change the opacity right here. So let's set that to about 70. There we go. And then let's make roughly the same selection we just made, like that and there. And we have sunglasses again already typed in right here. So let's hit generate. And although this looks a little bit creepy, you can see that it's going to keep more of the pixels of the original image intact. So let's see the different examples. So I don't think any of these look very good. So let's hit more for some more options. And there we go. So let's look at these. This one also doesn't look too good. And that one actually looks pretty good. Yeah, I like this one. You can still see my eye a little bit right here. And this actually looks quite natural. All right, so let's hit keep on that one. And then let's continue editing this a little bit. So So I'm going to set the opacity back to 100. There we go. And then I'm going to select this area right here. There we go. And I'm going to type in black tie and let's hit enter. And there we go. So we have 4 options for a black tie. Actually like this one quite a bit. This one not so much. And that one also not so much. So I'm going to select this second one and I'm going to hit keep. And then I'm actually going to zoom in here because there are a few sections that don't look too good. So I'm going to select, there we go. And let's hit generate. And as you can see, that's going to fix that gap that was in there. And let's see which one fits best. I think this one looks best. So let's hit keep. All right. So next I've always been interested to see what I look like bold. So let's grab this brush tool. Let's make it a little bit bigger. There we go. And then let's select all of this here. There we go. So right now we can of course type in bald right here so that it will generate a bald head. But I'm also interested to see what it will generate if I don't type in anything. So let's try that first. And as you can see, that's just going to give me some random haircut, which is quite interesting. But let's hit cancel right here. And as you can see, that selection is still there. So now we can just type in bald and let's hit enter. And there we go. So that's 4 versions of me without hair. And I think this one looks probably most like the shape of my head. So let's hit keep. Starting to look pretty cool right now. And so from this, I'm getting some holiday vibe. So let's actually change this background to be on the beach. So I'm going to hit this background right there. And it's going to automatically select the background for us. And then I'm going to type in the text prompt on a tropical beach. And let's hit generate. And there we go. So let's see which one of these fits best. So I like this one quite a lot. So let's hit keep. And as you can see, this image doesn't blend in quite well right now. So to fix that, we can go to settings. Let's decrease the size of the brush tool a little bit. And then let's select this border. There we go. And then let's just hit generate without a prompt. And as you can see, that's going to blend me in way better than it just did. So let's hit keep on this one. And there we go. A cool midlife crisis version of myself on a tropical beach. Now this is pretty much it for the main features of this generative fill tool, but there are a few more options that I want to show you. So for that, let's first select myself right here. So let's select the background. Let's go to select the background and then let's hit invert to only select myself. And then right here, once we've made a selection, we get this prompt bar. And right here, there are also some more settings that we can use. So first off right here, there's the match shape option where we can choose freeform or conform. And I'll show you what that does in a little bit. And then right here, it says preserve content. So how much of the original image do we want to preserve after it's going to generate something new? So right now it says 100% new. So if we generate right now, as you can see, none of the original image is going to be preserved and it's just going to fill it up in the most logical way that it can think of. And right here, for instance, it's going to create a bridge. And so it's going to take no inspiration from the original content that it had right there. So let's hit cancel. And now let's change this setting so that a little bit more of the original picture is going to be preserved. And let's hit generate. And although this looks quite disturbing, you can see that it took a lot of inspiration from the original picture. And so let's hit cancel right now and let's try to make it a little bit less of the original, but so that it's still going to understand that this is going to have to be a person. So as you can see, that's going to make it stray away completely from the original image, although it does maintain the composition of the original image. And so this is also a way to create variations of things. So for instance, if we invert this, we can create some variations of the background. So right here, let's make sure a little bit more of the original is maintained and let's hit generate. And as you can see, that's just going to create some variations of the background that we had. So I think this one looks pretty good. So let's keep. All right. So now one more example to show this freeform versus conform shape matching that it's going to do. So I just made this random selection on the background right here. And we're going to start with the default, which is freeform. So let's hit generate. And I actually typed in monkey right here. So it's going to create a monkey and let's hit generate. And as you can see, it's going to create a monkey within that selection. And you can see, and this one sort of failed, but you can see with these ones that the part of the selection that it utilizes differs between the image, as you can see quite clearly here. So if you hit cancel, you can see this whole part right here and right here wasn't used by most of them. But now if we go to these options and we set this to conform instead of freeform and we hit generate, as you can see, that's going to try to use all of those sections that we select, and it's going to do that for all of these. And as you can see here, it even put the monkey on a branch to make it fill everything. And so that's the difference. So if you use this conform option, the shape of your selection is going to have a lot more influence on the final generation. All right, so then for the final setting right here, I made this selection and I typed in monkey again. And for these settings right here, we have the guidance strength, and this is going to determine how closely the generated content keeps to the prompt. So by default, it's going to be quite close to the original image, which means that it's going to use the influence of the image in the generation. And that's going to make sure that what we generate blends in quite well to the rest of the image. But if we, for instance, set this to prompt 100%, now it's not going to take into account the original image at all when creating this generation. So let's hit generate, and there we go. So you can see that this doesn't blend in to the rest of the image at all, although this one gets pretty close actually. But if we hit cancel and we change that to be quite close to the original image and let's hit generate, Now you can see it's trying to blend it in a little bit better. Although these final two don't blend in too well, this one blends in very well. So let's hit keep on this one. And that is it for this generative fill tool within Adobe Firefly. So for a quick recap, we saw how we can easily add new objects to images or change an existing object to another using a text prompt. We saw how we can use generations with no prompt to blend objects or parts of an image together. We looked at changing the opacity of a selection to let some of the original image be maintained. We saw how we can use the remove tool to remove object, and we looked at some of the more advanced settings we can use in our generation. So in the next lesson, we are also going to look at this, but in the actual Adobe Photoshop beta. And right there, we are able to use all the amazing tools that Photoshop already has in combination with this very powerful generative fill. So I'll see you in the next lesson. Hi everyone, welcome to the next lesson. So in this one, we are going to look at the generative fill tool in Adobe Firefly. And this tool is actually also already integrated in the Photoshop beta, and we will look at that in the next lesson. But for now, we are going to stay in the Adobe Firefly beta environment. So let's click that to enter it. And right here, there are two options. First off, you're able to upload an image of your own that you're able to play with, or there are some example images that you can choose as well. So let's start with that. So let's first try this example, and that is going to bring you to the generative fill workspace. Now there are a few options that we have right here. So first off, on the left, it says insert, remove, and pan. So pan is just going to allow us to move around. So if you're zoomed in very far, we can, for instance, use this to move to another part of the image. And actually, if you have one of these other tools selected, you can also hit the scrolling wheel to pan around as well, as you can see right here. And then on the left right here, we're going to have two options, insert and remove. So for insert, if we click that and we make a selection like so, you can see the background is going to turn transparent. And then right here, we are able to give a text prompt of what we want this to be filled in with. So we could, for instance, type spaceship and enter, and then it's going to load. And as you can see, that's going to give us 4 different variations of spaceship in that area that we selected. And what's really cool, and especially visible on this one, is that it is going to use the context of the image, and it's going to apply the same lighting and the same colors to the object that it generated as well. So as you can see, the lighting right here is very similar to that of this tower right here. So let's look which one of these we like best. And I actually like the second one best. And if I want to keep this one, I can simply click keep right here. And if I hit cancel, it's going to remove that. But let's hit keep for now. There we go. And we are able to do way more things right here. So for instance, I could select an area right here, something like this. And let's make it a little bit bigger, maybe something like this. And then I could type in pirate ship and let's hit enter. And there we go. So it's going to give us 4 variations again. And if we don't like any of them, we are also able to click more right here. And that's going to generate 4 more variations without losing the previous one. So once these are done, we are able to scroll back to the previous ones and see if any of them are better after all. So I actually like this one quite a bit. So I'm going to hit keep on that one. And that's the basic idea of this insert generative fill tool. So you just select an area and then you type in what you want this to be filled in with. And for instance, we would also be able to select this whole tower, and we could type in castle tower, for instance, hit enter, and it's going to give us some different types of towers. And this is actually something like a cathedral tower, which I actually like quite a bit. So I'm going to hit keep on that one. And so with this tool that we are using to make these selections right here, we are also able to change some of the options about it. So first off, we can hit clear right here to remove the selection that we made. And right here we have the settings option, and then we are able to change the brush size. So if we set that higher, this circle is going to be bigger. So we're going to make a bigger selection. And then right here we have the brush hardness. So that's going to change the hardness of the edge. So for instance, if I scroll in here, you can see that there's not a very hard edge right here. But if I set this to 100, for instance, you can see the edge is way harder than right here. And if I set it way lower, you can see it's a very soft edge. So let's keep that somewhere in the middle. There we go. And then right here, we are also able to change the brush opacity. And with this, you can do very interesting things. So let's hit clear, first of all, right now. So for instance, if I set the opacity, if I leave it at 100% and I want to select the whole sky right here, I could do that. It's going to be a little bit of a rough job. There we go. And if I now type in sky with lightning storm and hit enter, as you can see, that's going to change the entire image, or at least everything that was selected, and make it completely different from the starting image that we had right here. But if we go to settings and set the opacity to, for instance, 54% or something, and now we make that same selection, there we go. Now it's going to maintain part of the pixels within the selection. So if you now hit generate, that already looks a bit better. Let's look at the different generations, and there we go. So it's not perfect. They're all at least a bit better than the previous generation, and they're not perfect yet. So I think I'm gonna go for this one, and I'm going to hit keep. And as you can see, this ship, this tower, and this UFO right here, they sort of stick out of the background. And we can actually also use this generative fill tool to fix that. So let's zoom in on the ship right here first, and let's make this brush size a little bit smaller. There we go. And now we're going to select, and actually let's clear, and let's set this opacity to be 100 again. There we go. And then let's select this line that it made around it. Go. And there we go. And now we're not going to fill in any prompt, and we're just going to hit generate. And there we go. That's already a little bit better. I like this one quite a bit. And as you can see right here, there are 2 generations that it deleted because they are in violation of user guidelines. And this is actually a flaw in this beta version where it often flags regular images for being in violation of the user guidelines. And that's probably something that will be fixed in the final release. But for now, let's just select this one and let's hit keep. And we're also able to do this again to make sure this blends in even better. So let's select around it right here and this part as well. There we go. And let's hit generate. And there, as you can see, it worked way better this time. And I think this one looks pretty cool. Let's zoom out a little bit. And there we go. So it's completely blended into the background. So let's hit keep. And then we can do the same thing for the UFO right here. So I'm going to select around it. There we go. And let's then hit generate. And as you can see, that first one doesn't look too well, but that one actually looks pretty good. And that one does as well. And that one's a little worse. So I think I'm going to go for this one. Let's zoom out a little bit, see if it looks good. And I think this one looks the best. So I'm going to hit keep on that. And as you can see, that's a really nice way to get the images to blend in together. So that's most of this insert tool. There are a few more options that we have right here. So for instance, if I am going to make a selection like this and I actually go a little bit too far. So as you can see, I overlapped a little bit of the UFO. I'm also able to use this subtract option right here. And then I'm able to remove part of the selection that I made. So that could also be pretty useful. Then let's hit clear right here. We're also able to select using AI the background of this image. So now it's only going to select the actual object in the image. And then we're also able to hit invert so that only those aspects are selected. And now that we have these selected, we can also use the remove tool. So if we click right there we go. And we still have that selection and we can click remove. So as you can see right here, we are not able to select a text prompt and it's just going to remove those objects, or at least it's going to try to, as you can see. So right here it removed the UFO pretty well, but it didn't quite do the perfect job. So if we hit cancel, it's actually better to paint a little bit more around those objects like so, and for the ship as well. There we go. And let's now hit remove and see if it's able to do it right now. And there we go. So on the first one, it removed the UFO and the ship pretty well, but it's left the tower right here. But right here, it removed absolutely everything, and here as well. But this one looks awesome. So let's hit keep on that one. And so that's basically how this generative fill tool works. So now we use one of the stock images. Let's actually see if this also works with one of our own images. So let's go back right here and let's hit upload image. And I'm going to upload this image of myself. So let's see what we were able to do with. So first off, let's try to give myself sunglasses. So I'm going to increase the brush size a little bit. There we go. And then let's draw some sunglasses right here, or at least make the selection where they're supposed to go. And then let's type in sunglasses and let's hit enter. And there we go. So we have some sunglasses. So as you can see, what this does is over the entire selection that I made, it's going to create a new pixel. So part of my facial structure and my eyebrows, for instance, are going to get lost and regenerated in a different way. And there is a way to mitigate that a little bit. So let's hit cancel on this. And similar to how we did with the sky in the previous example, we are able to change the opacity right here. So let's set that to about 70. There we go. And then let's make roughly the same selection we just made, like that and there. And we have sunglasses again already typed in right here. So let's hit generate. And although this looks a little bit creepy, you can see that it's going to keep more of the pixels of the original image intact. So let's see the different examples. So I don't think any of these look very good. So let's hit more for some more options. And there we go. So let's look at these. This one also doesn't look too good. And that one actually looks pretty good. Yeah, I like this one. You can still see my eye a little bit right here. And this actually looks quite natural. All right, so let's hit keep on that one. And then let's continue editing this a little bit. So I'm going to set the opacity back to 100. There we go. And then I'm going to select this area right here. There we go. And I'm going to type in black tie and let's hit enter. And there we go. So we have 4 options for a black tie. Actually like this one quite a bit. This one not so much. And that one also not so much. So I'm going to select this second one and I'm going to hit keep. And then I'm actually going to zoom in here because there are a few sections that don't look too good. So I'm going to select. There we go. And let's hit generate. And as you can see, that's going to fix that gap that was in there. And let's see which one fits best. I think this one looks best. So let's hit keep. All right. So next, I've always been interested to see what I look like bald. So let's grab this brush tool. Let's make it a little bit bigger. There we go. And then let's select all of this hair. There we go. So right now we can of course type in bald right here so that it will generate a bald head. But I'm also interested to see what it will generate if I don't type in anything. So let's try that first. And as you can see, that's just going to give me some random haircut, which is quite interesting. But let's hit cancel right here. And as you can see, that selection is still there. So now we can just type in bald and let's hit enter. And there we go. So that's 4 versions of me without hair. And I think this one one looks probably most like the shape of my head, so let's hit keep. Starting to look pretty cool right now. And so from this I'm getting some holiday vibe. So let's actually change this background to be on the beach. So I'm going to hit this background right there, and it's going to automatically select the background for us. And then I'm going to type in the text prompt on a tropical beach, and let's hit generate. And there we go. So let's see which one of these fits best. So I like this one quite a lot, so let's hit keep. And as you can see, this image doesn't blend in quite well right now. So to fix that, we can go to settings. Let's decrease the size of the brush tool a little bit, and then let's select this border. There we go. And then let's just hit generate without a prompt. And as you can see, that's going to blend me in way better than it just did. So let's hit keep on this one. And there we go. A cool midlife crisis version of myself on a tropical beach. Now this is pretty much it for the main features of this generative fill tool, but there are a few more options that I want to show you. So for that, let's first select myself right here. So let's select the background. That's going to select the background, and then let's hit invert to only select myself. And then right here, once we've made a selection, we get this prompt bar. And right here, there are also some more settings that we can use. So first off, right here, there's the match shape option where we can choose freeform or conform. And I'll show you what that does in a little bit. And then right here, it says preserve content. So how much of the original image do we want to preserve after it's going to generate something new? So right now it says 100% new. So if we generate right now, as you can see, none of the original image is going to be preserved, and it's just going to fill it up in the most logical way that it can think of. And right here, for instance, it's going to create a bridge. And so it's going to take no inspiration from the original content that it had right there. So let's hit cancel. And now let's change this setting so that a little bit more of the original picture is going to be preserved. And let's hit generate. And although this looks quite disturbing, you can see that it took a lot of inspiration from the original picture. And so let's hit cancel right now, and try to make it a little bit less of the original, but so that it's still going to understand that this is going to have to be a person. So as you can see, that's going to make it stray away completely from the original image, although it does maintain the composition of the original image. And so this is also a way to create variations of things. So for instance, if we invert this, we can create some variations of the background. So right here, let's make sure a little bit more of the original is maintained, and let's hit generate. And as you can see, that's just going to create some variations of the background that we had. So I think this one looks pretty good, so let's keep. All right, so now one more example to show this freeform versus conform shape matching that it's going to do. So I just made this random selection on the background right here, and we're going to start with the default, which is freeform. So let's hit generate, and I actually typed in monkey right here. So it's going to create a monkey, and let's hit generate. And as you can see, it's going to create a monkey within that selection. And you can see, and this one sort of failed, but you can see with these ones that the part of the selection that it utilizes differs between the image, as you can see quite clearly here. So if we hit cancel, you can see this whole part right here and right here wasn't used by most of them. But now if we go to these options and we set this to conform instead of freeform, and we hit generate, as you can see, that's going to try to use all of those sections that we select, and it's going to do that for all of these. And as you can see here, it even put the monkey on a branch to make it fill everything. And so that's the difference. So if you use this conform option, the shape of your selection is going to have a lot more influence on the final generation. All right, so then for the final setting right here, I made this selection and I typed in monkey again. And for these settings right here, we have the guidance strength, and this is going to determine how closely the generated content keeps to the prompt. So by default, it's going to be quite close to the original image, which means that it's going to use the influence of the image in the generation, and that's going to make sure that what we generate blends in quite well to the rest of the image. But if we, for instance, set this to prompt 100%, now it's not going to take into account the original image at all when creating this generation. So let's hit generate, and there we go. So you can see that this doesn't blend in to the rest of the image at all, although this one gets pretty close actually. But if we hit cancel and we change that to be quite close to the original image, and let's hit generate, now you can see it's trying to blend it in a little bit better. Although these final two don't blend in too well, this one blends in very well. So let's hit keep on this one, and that is it for this generative fill tool within Adobe Firefly. So for a quick recap, we saw how we can easily add new objects to images or change an existing object to another using a text prompt. We saw how we can use generations with no prompt to blend objects or parts of an image together. We looked at changing the opacity of a selection to let some of the original image be maintained. We saw how we can use the remove tool to remove objects, and we looked at some of the more advanced settings we can use in our generation. So in the next lesson, we are also going to look at this, but in the actual Adobe Photoshop beta. And right there, we are able to use all the amazing tools that Photoshop already has in combination with this very powerful generative fill. So I'll see you in the next lesson. Hi everyone, congratulations, you reached the end of the course. So as you will have found throughout the course, generative AI is really going to change the way we work and how we will realize your design skills will still be required, but generative AI will raise the bar while increasing your productivity. By learning how to use generative AI AI tools, you can more quickly and effectively and in a more unique way realize your idea. But you still need the creativity to think of what you want to create and what will look good and attract. And you need to refine your taste to be able to judge the outputs of the generative AI and iterate towards an amazing design. Right now, the generative AI for 2D images and text is already quite impressive, but in the future, as data, computational power, and AI technology increase, we will also see similar tools for 3D design and video. Since those future technologies will be based on the same fundamental technologies as current generative AI tools, you are now equipped to quickly master the future tools as well. Furthermore, in the future, generative AI like ChatGPT will also be implemented in the Adobe apps, and instead of clicking and making edits by hand, we will more and more be able to simply direct the Adobe chatbot on what edits we want to make, and it will carry them out for us. We will talk with our software programs and they will carry out our will. We are not there yet, and for the foreseeable future, technical skill and expertise will remain valuable and necessary to produce the highest level design. Generative AI is just another tool in your arsenal, albeit perhaps the most powerful. So that is it for this course, but be aware that this course is a living course and new lessons will be added as Adobe releases new Firefly generative AI tools. So look out for those coming lessons. Thank you for choosing this course, and if it was valuable to you, leaving a 5-star review is the best way to support it if you feel that to be deserved, of course. Thanks again, keep exploring, and I'll see you in another course.